Hello and welcome to That Talk with Tariro. I'm sure we know the adage that says, if you want to hide anything from an African, put it in a book. And we have often heard people talking about, people don't read. And if we don't read, let alone writing, I'm even challenged when it comes to that. So today I've brought in Thembe Khumalo. I'm sure some of you would know her from TV those days. She's just turned into a completely different person in terms of her profession now. She is a storyteller. She is a personal branding coach and founder of Brandholder. Thembe, welcome to the Talk with Tariro.
Thank you for having me.
Maybe let's start off. Where have you been? We used to see Thembe on TV, and then Thembe just disappeared on the face of earth.
Is that how it feels?
It does.
Actually, I have been telling stories, Tariro. I was telling stories on ZBC,
yes,
on Joy TV, at Newsday. It's really what I have done with my life.
Yes.
I think when I talk about storytelling, it's more an identity issue than a profession issue for me.
Yeah.
So another thing that I have done is worked in advertising, where I've been helping corporates to tell the stories of their brands. So yeah, I never stopped telling stories.
She has not stopped telling stories. And when we say she has really transformed, we used to just see the pretty face on TV, but now she's almost like the content creator. She's been a CEO of some company, I still remember. So she didn't say everything. She tried to really tone it down, but Thembe has really transformed. Why is storytelling important to you?
Wow. It's important to me as an individual because it's the lens through which I understand the world. I find stories and stories find me, and they help me to make sense of what's happening around us. It's important to me as an African,
yes,
because I think that if we can tell better stories about Africa, we enable the world to tell better stories about us. Yes. But it has to start with us. It has to start with how we see ourselves, which is why I am in personal branding also. Because I think if you can see yourself clearly, you can tell a better story about who you are. Yeah. An authentic story that's not based on what everybody else is doing, and a story that enables the rest of the world to tell an authentic story about you. I think the narratives that have been propagated about us as African people are, shall I say, skewed, yes. Outdated, and in many instances just simply untrue.
Yeah.
But it's because we haven't taken charge of our own stories. And I think if we can do that at an individual capacity, at a community capacity, at a country and at a continent level, we could actually change the world.
Indeed, we could actually change the world. And what Thembe is raising is quite critical, because when it comes to documentation, we often lack. Just imagine when you talk about Ngano Dzana Tsurona Gudo, it's not documented, but a lot was happening during those days. There is little now that we are trying. So when we are talking about now documenting, storytelling, we're sort of controlling our own narrative. And why I've invited Thembe today is she's written a book, Words and Other Weapons, which is a collection of essays and short stories. And it's going to be out soon, hey?
Yes, in the next few weeks.
In the next few weeks, it's going to be out. Tell us more about Words and Other Weapons. What motivated you to have that title?
Well, I've always worked and played with words from when I was very young.
Yes.
In school, you know how they will give you, say, 5 essay topics, and you must choose one and write your essay. And I would do that in class. And then at home, I would take those topics and write the other 4 essays just for fun.
Oh my God, you've always been a writer.
Yes, because I just so enjoyed writing. And I always knew that there was a book or a few books in me. I didn't know when, I didn't know how, I didn't know what it would be about. But I took a year to focus on writing.
Wow.
I did the bare minimum for survival in terms of business and work. And I just tried to make writing a priority. And that is what came out, this collection. I'm still writing, as I've always done. I did start a novel. I did start a non-fiction book as well. So those two projects are still running parallel. But I thought it was important for me to put something out after that year that I gave myself, so that I could say, okay, this is what I did with that year. Because I didn't want to feel like, well, you took a year off and there's still no book, you know? Yeah, some of those stories are stories that I started 10 years ago. Because I'm always writing, I will capture a sentence here, a phrase there, and I'll park it. And I know that when I go back to it, it will trigger something, and an essay will come out, or a short story will come out. So that's really what happened. The title comes from an acknowledgement of how powerful words are. You know, words are the tools that we use for building. They are also the tools that we use for breaking down. So when you think about words in the life of a woman, in the life of a regular African, they are really critical tools, and they can be weapons. Yeah.
Indeed, words can be critical tools. They can also be weapons. Join us after this short break as we are going to now delve into some of those short stories and essays. What was she focusing on? What drove her to focus on that? I read one essay and it was quite personal, the loss of her dad. So we hear more from her. Join us after this short break.
Let's live it up and party and have cracking good fun. When it comes to edutainment, DSTV's #1.
Is everybody ready to go, go, go?
We've got the zaniest characters to transport you away. The party is cracking, so why not come play? You're gonna love it. We've got so many channels and a ton of new shows, like Disney and Nickelodeon, where anything goes. So live it up with DSTV. We bring the fun. You know we're #1.
Vanhu veZimbabwe, hondo yapera. Vanhu veZimbabwe, hondo inonetsa. Vanhu veZimbabwe, voda kubatana.
As the Union Jack came down on the 18th of April 1980, a new Zimbabwe was born. A new Zimbabwe that prioritized the sons of the soil to own their land, which saw the black majority claiming their right to self-rule, a moment that was celebrated through music and dance.
Welcome back as we continue with our discussion, where today we have Thembi Khumalo, and we're discussing her upcoming collection of essays and short stories. A book, and for me that's really challenging and motivating as well, because as Zimbabweans, as Africans, we need to take writing seriously. We need to be documenting, and I'm sure many of us have got questions to say, does it even pay? She spent a year writing the book, so I'm sure she is going to unpack all that for us. Thembi, in terms of the essays and short stories, what are you focusing on?
I would say it's a broad range of life experiences. Both the fiction and the essays are really about what happens in life. I think I want in my writing always to provoke introspection, particularly about things we take for granted, or things we've taken a position on that maybe with a shift in perspective would make us change our position. So I've talked about grief and loss. I've talked about the joy of parenting.
Yes.
I've talked about the foreboding that comes as you anticipate an empty nest. I've talked about suicide, delaying parenting, self-harm, depression. It's like a whole panorama of life experiences.
And seeing you writing some of your own personal experiences, I saw you wrote about the loss of your dad. You also wrote about the struggles your kids had when you had your divorce. You know, writing those, were you getting some form of healing out of it when you are now putting pen to paper in terms of what you have gone through as an individual?
As I said earlier, I think writing for me is something I use to understand the world. So when something happens, I write, I journal. I've journaled since I was a little girl. So from those journals is where that content came from. Where I'm saying this is an experience that seems very different. Losing my dad. Getting divorced, but there's a thread that runs through those experiences, which is loss and grief. So how can I put these experiences together in a way that is meaningful, that will provoke people to think differently, or to see something that they perhaps might not have known was there? You know, when someone is behaving in a certain way, you make a judgment based on your own lens. But maybe if I can help you to shift that lens and see it in a different way, you can both enjoy a better experience.
So when we're looking at us now as readers, when the book is now out, how do you foresee it impacting on our lives?
Well, I hope it's a good experience for you. I hope that it makes you pause and reflect on your own life, on the lives of the people around you. I hope it helps you see yourself more clearly, which is really my life mission, and gives you tools to tell your own story and to see your own story differently. You know, sometimes you capture a narrative about your life and then you run with it. And it doesn't always serve you, you know? So maybe when you've read a story about somebody who had the same or similar experiences, you can write a different narrative about your own life, one that serves you better.
And some people might actually be wondering, Thembi, you said you took a whole year to write this book. And somebody will say, I need to survive. Where will I get the money from for me to have a day-to-day survival? And some will even ask to say, can I earn something out of it?
Sure. When I say I took a year, I did the minimum amount of work that I needed to get an income to survive. So in terms of running the business, for example, I had hired an MD. So she was doing a lot of the admin work and the leading. And I was simply doing enough that I could pay my bills. So I wasn't trying to grow the business. I wasn't out there growing my brand even. I was simply in survival mode. It's not like
so the question that where I really want us to go is we want to promote writing. We want to promote reading. You know, the same way when I heard Thembi has got a book, I was like, wow. Because even for me to say I can actually have something that I write, when I'm writing, it's maybe work, It's a school assignment, and it ends there. And we
Yeah.
are saying we need to have a complete paradigm shift. How do we get there as Zimbabweans, as Africans, where we are saying, really, let's focus on something that's completely different?
I know that there is a perception of writing as a profession out of which one can make a living. I don't think we're in a place where we're a small economy.
Yeah.
I don't think we're in a place where we can expect people to survive just from writing.
Yeah.
The publishing industry itself is so complicated.
Thank you. Yes.
That you will see a book and it's $15 and you'll think, whoo, Tembi must be making a
lot of
fortune.
money. Yes.
But you don't know that from that $15 maybe Tembi takes home $2 once the industry
thing, yeah.
has the
Taken
machine
also.
is now in place. So I think it would be disingenuous for me to say, drop your work and come, let's be writers.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a profession that you can survive on, in my view.
Yeah.
But if you are a writer, write. If you are a storyteller, tell
Tell the
stories. Just like if you are a runner, I love to run, and I run.
Yeah.
I don't get a medal. I may not participate in a race for years, 2 years, 3 years, but I don't stop running because something in me says run.
Pushes you.
Right? So and when I do participate in a race, I'm never going to win a prize that will give me money. So it's not everything that we do that we should do for money. Some things we do because of the thing in us that says, this is who you are. You're a storyteller, tell stories. You're a writer, write. You're a runner, run.
Well, we will continue with our discussion. Tembi saying, if you're a storyteller, tell those stories. You're a writer. Why not go for it? Write. Join us after this short break.
Kana vakadzi chaivo vanogona kuuya vakapfeka izvo zvipfupi zvatiri kutaura kusimira kwavanenge vakaita zvinova zvinenge zvisina kunaka.
Uniform haikupinzi denga, kunzi mufundisi hakupinzi denga, asi moyo wako ndio unofanira kuchena kuti ukwanise kuita sei kupinda denga.
Vazhinji vakuenda kumatare kundotsvaga varume.
Tinobhiliva kuti kana taparidzawo shoko raMwari achabatwawo moyo ochinja unadzurisa munhu wake.
Nyaya iripo patino sekuru ndeyekuti dai tanga tabatana isusu todzidzisa vana vedu kuti isusu kana tichinzi tiri vanhu vatema, vanhu vemuZimbabwe.
Nguva yasvika yamenge makamirira chirongwa patsime.
Welcome back. We continue with our discussion where we have Tembi Kumalo. And reason being, we're talking about Words and Other Weapons, her book, which is a collection of short stories and essays. And once we have her here, this I had not told her, but I'm catching it by surprise. Tembi is a personal branding coach, and she's a brand builder. It's her when we talk about brands. So it's important that we also get tips from her. Why is branding so important, Tembi? I attended one of your masterclass that you carried during COVID.
Yes.
And I would say I grew a lot from that whole exercise.
Oh,
and
wow.
I was just mesmerized saying, wow, this is somebody I went to school with. But look at the depth of the knowledge that she has in terms of building brands. And I would want Zimbabwe to briefly benefit from your world of knowledge in terms of branding. Why is branding important?
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm very glad to hear your testimonial. You know, a brand is a total experience of a product or a service or a person. So often when we think about branding, we think about logos, we think about maybe fashion, grooming and deportment, but it's not only that. It is the total experience. So when you're looking at a person, their brand involves their qualifications, their work experience, how they show up in the world at work and also outside work. And that total experience becomes what we use to build a reputation. And it's the same with companies. It's not just your logo, not just your advertising, but it's what happens when I call your helpline or even when I call your switchboard. How am I greeted? When I lodge a complaint, how's the response? All of those experiences come together to form a brand. And brands are the basis upon which people decide whether they will work with us or not. You know, a lot of what will happen in your life is based on how people view you. The person who marries you because of how they view you. The person who hires you for a job hires you because of how they view you. So if you are investing in your personal brand, you want to manage that view in a very conscious, very deliberate, very intentional way. And that's really what personal branding is about. It's about managing how you are viewed intentionally.
I remember one of the exercises that you gave us, Tembe, was to look at what's on your profile picture. And, you know, your digital footprint, the things that we do on social media, that sometimes we actually don't even think of, but we do them on a day-to-day basis. But you are saying somebody who's going to interact with you, somebody who's going to hire you, they're going to hire you or view you in such a way because that's how you've portrayed yourself. Could you unpack that? Because like now with social media, it has sort of disrupted the whole, you know, way of us doing things. And then we've got this idea of now me being a brand. And then sometimes I'm just somebody else there.
I think that it comes back to what I said right at the beginning in terms of, are we spending enough time in reflection?
We never.
Because I think
we never.
if you introspect enough, you will start doing things more intentionally instead of just doing things because they're trendy, they're fashionable, people are doing it. So you join in. And I think that's part of the challenge with social media, is that we do things without being intentional. When you're posting something, what is your goal with this post? Like, each post should have a reason. It doesn't have to be a very serious reason, like I'm looking for a job or a client, but it should have a reason that makes sense to you. So that tomorrow, when it creates consequences for you, you can make sense of it to yourself, not even to other people. Because your first customer is yourself. And the most important story that you'll ever tell in your life is the story you tell yourself about yourself. So when you're posting that thing, what's the story you're telling about yourself? To yourself first, before you tell that story to everybody else who's going to see your post. So I think just the simple aspect of intentionality is a good place to start as we manage our social media.
It's quite interesting and still very tricky. When we're having that masterclass, you know, I went on your Instagram. I went on your LinkedIn. And it's just uniform. And you can actually see who Tembe is. But if you go on some of our...
Not you, though. I hope.
You will see all sorts, you know, where as a person, when you then say, so who's this person? You can't even tell. In terms of that. So how do we have that mindset shift now, where somebody is actually listening to you and it's hitting them to say, okay, I need to. How do we get that mindset shift? How do I correct that digital footprint?
I think you start on the inside.
Yes.
So all brand building is an internal job first, by deciding who you are. Like a lot of people haven't even thought about that.
Yes.
Who am I? Who do I want to be? How do I get from who I am to who I want to be?
Yes.
And what is my purpose? Like, what am I trying to achieve with my life?
Yes.
What am I trying to achieve with my career? Before you go to the how will I go about that, or what is my brand position, etc., etc. So those simple questions: purpose, values, just a mission, and so on, for your own self.
Yeah.
Then you can say, okay, so if I want to be seen as who I am,
Yeah.
which is always the best idea, as opposed to wanting to be seen as someone I'm not.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what kind of image should I have? How can I reflect who I really am? A simple example is people post Bible verses.
Yeah.
As their status or their bio, So when I encounter your profile and I see this Bible verse, am I going to have the Bible verse experience when I meet you? Consistency is the bedrock of branding. And as I said, it's a total experience. So the experience I have of you as a person and the experience I have of you from your Bible verse in your status should be one experience. Otherwise, it's a schizophrenic kind of brand. Yeah.
Okay.
So things like keeping a uniform profile picture across your different platforms is a very simple matter of consistency, recognizability, findability. So if you are as beautiful as you are today, and that's your picture on LinkedIn, then on WhatsApp, you've got a completely different picture. Maybe your wig is an afro and you are... Now, I'm not sure, is this the same Tariro? And we want to make it easy for customers to choose us. So if I have a uniformly recognizable image across my platforms, it's a no-brainer for a customer to say, oh, it's that Tembi. Yes, I recognize her picture from that other platform. Because the speed of decision-making, attention-grabbing, life in general in the digital age is just so fast. There's no time for people to be, examining, could this be the same Tariro? Am I going to get consistency?
Indeed, I'm sure we've benefited one or two things. It was critical that we also get to hear that from Tembi. That's all we had for you on this program of The Talk with Tariro. Join us next week. Goodbye.
kana vaka kana vakadzi chaivo vanogona kuuya vakapfeka izvo zvipfupi zvatiri kutaura kusimira kwavanenge vakaita zvinova zvinenge zvisina kunaka.
Uniform haikupinzi denga, kunzi mufundisi hakupinzi denga, asi mwoyo wako ndio unofanira kuchena kuti ukwanise kuita sei kupinda denga.
Vazhinji vakuenda kumatare kundotsvaga varume.
Tinobhiliva kuti kana taparidzawo shoko raMwari achabatwawo mwoyo ochinja unadzurisa munhu wake.
Sometimes the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Just ask Manchester United winger Jadon Sancho. Sancho's much-hailed move to Old Trafford hasn't worked out so far, and his future with the Premier League giants is now in limbo. After a long-running transfer saga, Jadon Sancho's wish to join Manchester United was finally granted in the summer of 2021. One of the best wingers in Europe at the time, Sancho signed for the Red Devils in a £73 million deal from Borussia Dortmund. But Sancho's dream move to Old Trafford is turning into a nightmare. The Englishman has struggled for form and consistency